the role of finance need to change. I speak at a lot of CFO conferences, and it's always come up. How could the perception of finance could be changed from being a gatekeeper, someone who says no, to someone who says yes, and being treated as a business partner? It is a problem where your business partners only see you as a number crunching function, as someone who we only could come when we need approval. What we need to have is was business partners to have finance at the table when we're already thinking about something, right? So that's why we need to start just change perception from being backwards and conservative function to someone who's open to innovation, someone who deserves that seat at the table.
Today, I'm joined on 2 Cents by Nikki Mamedova. She is Senior Finance Executive at RBC. First of all, Nikki, it's great to have you here. We're delighted to have you.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, definitely. I'm sure our audience are really going to benefit from your expertise here. Before we get started, do you want to just talk a little bit about your kind of journey to your current position and kind of what inspired you along this path?
Sure. Like I mentioned, I'm a senior finance executive, been in accounting and finance profession for over 20 years. Um, I'm lucky enough because I started my career in Big Four, and I've worked for several Fortune 500 companies and other recognizable brands, Amazon, Deutsche Bank, PwC, Deloitte, Saks, you name it, across different industries. I also worked in New York, London, Toronto, Hong Kong, and Bermuda. Um, Very lucky in that perspective.
Yeah, so your experience is really far-reaching, which is really, really exciting to hear. And that's why we're really excited to have you here today to talk about this, I guess, latest, probably the most crucial technological shift we've seen since probably the internet. I would say is with AI, really, this is the big thing, isn't it? It's going to kind of change everything. And I'm really eager to hear, like, from your perspective as a finance leader, like, what is it about AI that excites you the most and its potential to impact your work?
I'm really excited about AI. The
Yeah.
most thing I'm excited about is how it allows finance to evolve. Because finance traditionally is always viewed as the back office, very transactional. And AI is really allowing it to move it to become a strategic business partner who drives the business decision. It's not just about automation of finance, it's really making um, better decision making, quick decisions. And I'll give you some example how we implement in finance already. For example, in FP&A, financial planning and analysis, in the past we have been doing static monthly forecasts. Now we're
Mm.
moving to real time, rolling dynamic forecast, which is using the operational drivers, the external signals, as well as the historical data, and allows us to um, create and simulate different business scenarios. AI is also changing a lot the CFO world as well as the reporting to the board. You can't imagine how many manual efforts we had in finance putting this information together for the board, and it mostly was focused on historical performance. So now AI allows us to create dashboards, even suggest some narrative, and as a result, the conversation is shifting from what happened to what's next.
Yeah, that's really, really exciting. And I love how you mentioned, how it's making us a strategic partner. I think that's a big part of it is I think being a strategic partner, like you were saying, is not just talking about what the situation is here, but like what the future is going to look like. I think that's what you're talking about, isn't it? Like, and that's how you can
Sure.
sort of not just talk about the data as it is now, but what it's going to mean for us in the future, where we're going to end up. And that's really, really great. Definitely, really exciting stuff. So, compared to kind of then what I want to hit on today is kind of like I guess we've heard whispers about there being sort of obstacles slightly in terms of like AI adoption in finance, as opposed to like where there is maybe in kind of marketing or other areas of an organization. Is there any truth to this, Nikki? And if so, can you elaborate on it a little bit?
Sure, we are definitely cautious in finance more than
Yeah,
other function. And what you need to understand, we are responsible for numbers. So,
yeah.
with the difference between using AI and generating email for marketing
Mhm.
versus using AI for SEC reporting, the 10K, the
Yeah.
20F, whatever's going to the market, right? So, with more risk involved, and that's make us cautious. You also need to understand that finance tradition is very conservative function. We are not
Right.
the one on the front line of innovation, which is also holding us back a little bit. There's
Mhm.
also other reason as well is because finance, like I said, the tradition is very conservative. It's also being viewed as a cost function versus someone who could actually generate revenue and add value. And because of that, in my experience, it's much more difficult for us to get the AI investment versus for someone like Sale who could already justify or ROI. So that is some of those factors definitely holding us back a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think what you said about it being a what did you say, a cost function or viewed. That's something, for me as somebody who's like outside of finance, like I don't get that at all. How it could ever be viewed as that? Where does that come from? Like being viewed as a cost function rather than
Well, I mean, with a certain function which you view it as generating revenue for the
yeah,
company.
yeah,
And
yeah,
when finance traditionally, if you look at it, we put together the books, right? We keep books, we do some projection, but we're not the one who generates revenue. We view it as a compliance and admins function. And
yeah, yeah.
because of that, if you look at AI dollar investment, and I'm talking about any company, big or small, when we'll start looking at allocation where the dollars goes, I guarantee you, finance will never gonna be the first function where people would say, "Let's allocate their dollars," because whenever you allocate any investment, you wanna see return on investment.
Of
And for
course, yeah,
finance,
of course.
it's much more difficult to justify it versus, for example, for sales.
Yeah, yeah. And that kind of conservatism that you mentioned, the cautiousness, I suppose that's kind of, you said it holds you back, but I guess it's totally understandable in a way in the role in finance. Like you said, when you're dealing with very sensitive data a lot of the time. Like I think I can definitely understand how finance would be like less risk, would be more risk averse
Yes.
than something like marketing, where it's kind of like, oh, we can try a campaign and maybe, it might cost us money, but it's more about experimenting. You're not actually, but like, I suppose if finance risk can lead to like really, really serious outcomes, impact if there's a data leak, for example, and that has there been some very, very public cases of that happening in organizations recently, and it can be disastrous. Um, so I guess that does explain it a little bit. I think with so that I guess that kind of takes us on then to what we're talking about next, which is kind of like what is the cause of this cautiousness with AI? And do you think it is about do you think it is more about that kind of that ethical concern or concern about legislation, or do you think it is more just about, kind of the culture around it or legacy technology? What do you think it is? What's the main
I think
cause?
it's a mix of everything. And if you look at the industries, different industries, some industries are more regulated than others. Like
Right.
let's look at financial institution. I'm an RBC customer, so I definitely would not want RBC to play with AI, not in a responsive way, right? Because we hold my money. Some other industry are not as highly regulated, and like big tech, right?
Mhm.
That's why we're on the front of innovation. I do think you mentioned legal legacy technology. That is a huge barrier in my
Yeah.
experience because some of these ERP systems are decades long, like
Really?
old.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
even if you want to implement a cloud based AI solution, you can't plug them in because
No.
some of these legacy systems were just
Hmm.
not designed. We were not
Right.
developed at that
Mhm.
time. I know it's changing, but it requires more transformational effort. But you think that's why some of the startups, I think we're moving quicker than some of the larger companies because we start everything fresh. And you also mentioned culture. That is a very important component, especially in finance. In finance, you would hear some people say, if it's not broken, don't touch it, don't change it.
Right.
And I
Yeah.
think that needs mentality need to change. But I also think that you could have good intentions, but you
Mm.
could have great culture. But if you notice, MIT recently came up with research which was said 95% of AI efforts fail in a
Mhm.
corporation.
Of course.
It's because there's a disconnect between all this great intention, yet we want to do the transformation and we want to be great and doing this AI and actual execution and implementation because you sometimes don't have right people. Sometimes it's too political. Sometimes it takes a long time to make decisions about anything. Or sometimes you don't have right people at the table, right? That's why I think it
Yeah.
feels a lot at the implementation stage. With while a lot of companies could have good intention.
Yeah, I can totally understand that mentality as well of like, well, it works. What we do works. Just about. So as long as like nothing's going horribly wrong, I think sometimes people are hesitant to change anything because they think, well, if we make that change, we're taking a risk that something could go wrong. So why mess with what we have? I think that maybe is the mentality. And also, like you said, people who've been doing it for a long time, it is a hassle, isn't it? To learn a new way of doing something, I think. And we're going to get onto that a little bit, I think, like the kind of AI literacy,
True.
which is big. We can get onto that now, I suppose. We can, because we can start talking about, how do we change this? Actually, like, what do you think? Like, what are the main what do you see as being the thing that we can start doing to shift this and really kind of integrate AI into finance? Is it through kind of education? Is it through advocacy, having the right people at the table? What do you see? What do you think?
So you mentioned one important point about people being in the same place for a
Yeah,
long time. And that's a real problem.
yeah.
Because if you've been doing the same thing over and over the same way, and someone comes to you and says, you know what was a better way to do it, you're going to look at them and say, well, I know what I'm doing, right?
Mm.
And this is the best way of doing it. So that mentality of having people doing the same thing over and over needs to change. And this is where, when you said, how could we change it? We, as leaders, have a lot of power to change it.
Yeah.
I spent some time, I would say, at Amazon, which is probably one of the most transformational environment I've ever been to. Whenever I come to a different organization, I could immediately spot things that could be changed.
Mhm.
And I start with observing and then suggesting change. So I empower my team to think the same way. And that's what we need to be doing, making sure we start change in mentality,
Mhm.
in a way of thinking that it's not going to eliminate the job, but it's actually going to make finance more valuable and
Mm.
create some insight which could add to the business.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's a really, really great point. And I've had guests on here in the past who've kind of talked about, this I guess perception of finance leaders as the kind of number crunchers in the back.
Mm.
Like I guess a very kind of not necessarily very innovation heavy. And I guess that speaks to what you're talking about, which is that once you change that mindset and you think of yourself as being like, how much more could we do in terms of how we're interpreting the data and how we're using it to inform decisions that are being made at a broader scale, then that then leads to, I guess, more enthusiasm about embracing these tools, doesn't it? I think once you have that mindset shift, what do you think?
Absolutely. No, absolutely. I mean, I think we right now we're talking about the AI in finance, right? The overall the role of finance need to change? I speak at a lot of CFO conferences and it's always come up. How could the perception of finance could be changed from being a gatekeeper, someone
Mhm,
who says no, to
mhm,
someone who says yes,
mhm,
and
mhm,
being treated as a business partner? It is a problem where your business partners only see you as a number crunching function,
mhm,
as
mhm,
someone who we only could come when we need approval. What we need to have is was business partners to have finance at the table when we're already thinking about something, right? So that's why we need to start just change perception from being
Yeah,
backwards and conservative function to someone who's open to innovation, someone who deserves that seat at the table.
I see. Like, so not like rather than the final obstacle before we get something done, it's somebody
Exactly.
who's involved in the process from the get
Someone
go.
who will actually give you business because we have a lot of data. We
Uh-huh,
do
uh
get this data from someone else, but we have a lot of financial insight and insight in the business, which we could, uh, if we had time, if we free up our time from manual tasks, right? And that way AI is allowed, which is gonna help the business to make a better decision. But we need to make sure that we grow into this, and the business is looking at it as someone who adds value versus someone who is a compliance based function.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Having said that, though, I mean, I think that ultra awareness of compliance that is necessary in the role is actually something that's very needed in AI adoption. I think at the moment, especially it's one of the kind of top concerns that people have. I think about AI right now, and I was wondering, like, how are we going to sort of balance this? Do you think, like, the kind of there's it feels like with AI, there's kind of this mix of fear and trepidation, and that's normal with any technological shift. How do you see us being able to balance the innovation, I guess, with the caution? And I guess this is true not just of AI, but of your role in general, of the finance role for anything. What do you think?
So it definitely matters, right? Especially in a large organization. For example, you can't really do anything in a large organization, especially in financial services, without risk being involved or compliance being involved, because
mhm,
everything needs to be approved. In small organizations, it's a little bit easier sometimes. We may not have as many resources, but it's a bit easier because we may not have a strict compliant function. Again, it depends on the industry, right? What I always say, w- you need to start with something.
mhm,
Start with low risk, high impact
Yeah.
areas. Don't start, for example, with public company reporting.
Mhm,
It's a city
mhm,
report. It's a high risk, right? So start, for example, with reconciliation. I'm giving you an example. Or developing a better forecast. Reconciliation, where a lot of companies still spend significant amount of time, amount of people you have employed worldwide. It's unbelievable. Start with that. Start with, for example, which we've seen very recently in our organization, been automating policies and procedures.
mhm, mhm,
Expense report. What's some of the traditional way of checking the expense report? The expense report comes from the business, and when someone checking spending hours checking does that expense report match to the policy, it takes and when it takes a significant amount of time to approve that report, and business starts screaming, believe me, right, at a very senior level. Uh, Instead, automating some of these policies allows quickly check the compliance, which is like multiple hours, could come down to 10 minutes, something like that. So it's a very important area, but it's a low risk, I would say. When like if you start with these areas, you will build some momentum, you will build confidence, and then you could move in a high risk area.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's a sensible advice for anyone and anything, isn't it? In a way, I think it's because you kind of get an idea, I guess, of what could possibly go wrong when the stakes are low, and that's kind of like a test run. for when you
Exactly.
want it roll it out, and you can kind of yeah, I think that's definitely true. Yeah, that's just really really great. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, you always have a pilot, right? And if you think about any transformation, and you had one of this, you would always start with a pilot, and you're not going to come or pick that pilot as like the most important division in the company because you're gonna it's gonna stop the operation. You're gonna pick some division, and when you see how that goes, then learn on your learn from your mistakes,
Yeah,
and you're doing
absolutely.
that.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so what do you think then? What should finance leaders be doing right now in terms of kind of to prepare themselves then? Because this AI change is kind of is coming, and it's coming for it's going to touch everything eventually. Um, and I think we talk about finance being cautious, but it's just a matter of time, isn't it? I mean,
Yep.
it's gonna be a kind of sink or swim situation. We either embrace it or we fall behind. That's kind of what I think. So, what should we do? What should finance leaders be doing right now? Do you think to prepare themselves, to educate themselves? What advice would you give?
So I don't think we have a choice, to be
Yeah,
honest.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Because
yeah,
AI is
yeah.
here and it's taking over. I think it could take some companies in some areas of the country of the world uh, could still have some time, but I think it's already here. The one thing which I always say when you ask me a question, we should be doing something instead of kind of sitting and hoping it's going to be after me. So the first thing before any AI is being implemented is first of all, we need to get our people trained um, on AI because if you look at the finance skill set, it's accounting, finance, it's not necessarily data science. At least I'm talking
Hmm.
about not the new hires, but the people who've been around for at least 10 years or something like that. So we need to make sure that people, we don't have to understand the entire, right? Don't have the entire tool, but we need to understand at least some of the simple AI tools and how AI could be used. The second thing that I always suggest is to do some secondments. To have finance people being seconded to some uh, project which is led by a team. For example, you have some AI implementation project. It might not necessarily be for finance. It might be for a division, but have finance team members spend some time on it because by doing that, we're gonna learn some AI tools. We're gonna learn, for example, Alteryx. I'm just giving you an example, more simpler one, right? We could learn Tableau and Power BI, something like that, what we could bring back to the team.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
will
yeah.
allow that's actually excite a lot the team members because we get involved into something outside finance, and when we come back and we become champions, I feel like that is what I see worked in the past in my experience.
Yeah, the kind of skill sharing, right? Uh, I think that's really powerful. In any organization, rather than kind of doing, usual where we sit in a meeting and we watch the senior leaders kind of a lot of the time share slides on things. It's like it's a good idea, I think, to bring in people who don't normally share things and say like, what have you learned? You've gone away and you've learned this new skill, you've done this. I think it's really, really great. And I think a lot of organizations benefit, I think, from that. From bringing in more skills, more talents. I think in that way, it's a great idea. Yeah, definitely. These
Let your
things even.
people lead that. I always say I always inspire people and give them ownership. And I basically, whenever they come up with some ideas, I let them lead that project and I let
Yeah.
them educate their peers about it because that's what makes them exciting.
Yeah, definitely. It's good for work culture as well. I think as well. I think probably in finance, like that is probably something that isn't talked about enough as well. Is that kind of like that collaboration and the communication. Um, but I think I mean I don't know. Correct me if you think I'm wrong, but like finance again being viewed as someone who's kind of separate from everyone else. But I guess when you've got them actually sharing skills and talking, it removes that kind of stigma, doesn't it?
Yep.
And I think that's a really, really good thing. And because we should all be integrated, shouldn't we? I think every department, wherever you are, should all be talking, should all be cross functional. That's the goal, and it doesn't always happen, but it's
It
what we want.
doesn't all happen. That's exactly with a lot of silos, for sure.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Okay, so what do you think then? How long do you think this is going to take? What do you think? Like, because in terms of like, obviously you've talked already about the kind of impact of that you've already seen and how you've already used it. But what do you think? What do you think? What time frame we're looking at for this to be adopted? Do you think globally? What do you think? Let's go.
You know, if you would ask me that 10 years ago, I would have thought like everyone's already now on AI. After what I have seen, I think it's going to take time, at least 10 years, if
Yeah,
not more. And there's a reason for that, right? As well, like I mentioned, there are some industries which have to be more cautious. We have to build their own tools. Financial
Mhm,
service is one of the examples. That means it's going to take longer. Which needs to be also a generation change.
mhm, mhm,
I'll be honest, right? Like that perception of finance that we need new people who educated with new skills to come uh, to start working as well as get to certain level, um, and that's gonna take at least 10 years
you think
to me
so? Yeah, yeah, yeah.
On a global scale. That doesn't mean like some AI is not going to be implemented. I mean, there are some startups which is like way ahead of this, right? I'm talking about
yeah,
some of the global multinational companies. It's definitely between 5 to 10 years on a global scale.
Yeah. Do you think in financial services, you talked about this a little bit, but is there? Do you think they're scared of like customer response sometimes a little bit, or like kind of that, when you're dealing again, I guess I'm going back to kind of sensitive data here. Again, are they worried that they're going to scare people off a little bit? Do you think if they embrace this technology too rapidly, or what do you think?
Well, I don't. I think it's a very high risk, right? We're talking about. I mean, if we talk about the bank, like I said,
mm,
if I would hear that one of my banks would just be implementing the AI very rapidly, it's my data involved here.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
Like it's
yeah,
my customer data involved here, right? And a very sensitive data. So we need to be regulation around and in infrastructure, right? And controls around the data.
yeah,
Uh, it's one thing, and when the data needs to be correct, that's kind of a different thing. But financial services definitely more highly regulated than a lot of other industries. You have to meet the regulated um, requirement, and also what needs to happen as well, the regulation about AI need to come in place. When you ask how long it's going to take, how long it's going to take for the regulators finally to put certain requirements about the data, for example,
mm,
right? So that matters as well. So I think financial services definitely takes longer to be because also we're developing a lot of tools internally
mhm.
versus someone else could go buy them in the market. It's very risky for this particular industry.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I totally understand that, definitely, and I think people are more aware of these things, I think, than ever, more hyper aware of it, and I think it's definitely something what you said about, yeah, yeah. I mean, I can only agree. If I found out my bank was inputting my data into some new AI system, I'd be freaked out. Yeah, I mean, and I'm
Especially
very
as someone when you bought from someone else, right? Like I don't want my data. I love ChatGPT. I mean, but I don't want my data to go into some random ChatGPT.
yeah, yeah,
It's all
yeah,
my
yeah.
bank information in there, right? It's my social insurance number, it's a social security number. So
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Okay, so we're coming to a close now. I thought maybe we could do some just kind of more kind of general questions about the finance role. Um, what is your these are questions I kind of ask everyone at the end of the podcast that I just think are really kind of fun for like shorts and stuff. What is your kind of the biggest kind of finance myth that you'd like to see go to room 101 that you'd like to see disappear about the finance role?
that we always say no.
Okay.
I don't want people always think about that someone like a policeman or someone like that. I want
Yeah.
people to start thinking about as true business partners who could help versus prevent business from doing something.
Yeah. Definitely, that makes total sense. Yeah. Great. Okay. And what do you think? Let's sort of split it in two. So where do you want the finance role to be in 10 years' time? And then realistically speaking, where do you actually see it being? Where do you think it will actually be?
Definitely, when I talk about being a strategic business partner, where people come to us for insight and information and help them to make new deals and go to new markets. I
Mhm.
want us to become strategic function versus transactional. I also want us to eliminate manual processes. We have a lot of manual processes. I'm talking about uh, every single company I was working for. Every single, so many manual
Really?
processes. We spent so much time and so many people on doing things which take our time away from doing things which really matter.
Yeah.
We need to start
Absolutely.
like move away from this and start like being analyzing things and thinking about the future and telling what the future is going to be versus keep focusing on the past because that's what we're doing. Um,
Yeah.
that's what I really want us to be. To be. Are we gonna? I also want finance department to become not just all accountants and finance majors. It's like data analysts, right? Maybe
Mhm.
engineers or something like that, where we could work together. Are we gonna get there? Like I said, within 5 years, I don't think so.
No, absolutely not. You think it's going to be so you think it is inevitable that these manual processes disappear, but it's going to be a long time coming. It's going to take a long time.
What needs to happen, right, in order for everyone to upload? If you think about like the phone, when we
Mm,
got the iPhone,
Yeah.
it started with someone, and when everyone started adopting, and then everyone saw the benefit, and that's like how long it took us to adopt, how long took it to the internet. I know with a lot of companies out there who are not Amazon, who are not Google, uh, who are very profitable companies, but we're still doing things that we've done for 20 years. Because, like, remember we talked about that before, it works, it's not
Yeah.
broken. So, to
Yeah.
convince them that we need to bring AI and implement the risk, which is going to stop some of the finance operation, the business operation, it needs to be a major evaluation happening
Yeah.
where people start talking about, yeah, hey, we implemented the ads, it's work, and we saved this time and for this to happen. Like
Yeah.
any revolution and any new invention happening, it will take years.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think that what you're saying there, that is really the difference, isn't it? I guess between a kind of maintenance and an innovation mindset. The kind of like, oh, this works, we'll keep it going, and then the innovation mindset is more kind of like, but how much better could we be? How much better could we actually be? And I think, yeah, maybe it is going to take some time, definitely.
It's also another thing what why it's taking it long, right? Some people think about it as a threat to the job.
Right. Yeah. Oh, of course. Yeah. Of
Like
course. We
everyone,
haven't even touched
if
on
you're
that.
thinking like,
Yeah.
what is it gonna do? Like if I implement, if I simplify certain thing when it doesn't require 10 people, right? It may require one person, and some of the people are really reluctant from doing
Yeah.
that. And while we continue to have this type of mentality, it's going to slow that down. That's why I said it needs to be a generational change as well, because some
Yeah.
of the new kids on the block we think different way than people who like been in the business for 20 years or 25 years. And
Yeah.
we need
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. I think people who are coming into it for the first time, will be thinking about. They won't have any kind of preconceived notions about what the
Exactly.
role is. That's the thing. And I think yeah, when you've been doing it for so long, it is really hard to keep that going. I think, especially when it's a high stress role. Um, I think, yeah, that's a really, really good point. I like that a lot. I also like what you said about, not just people with finance degrees, with a financial background. You could have some, what's the word? Like, you bring in people from different skill sets sometimes can be really helpful, I think, in freshening any kind of anything up, any kind of discipline up. Yeah. What would you like to see? What kind of people would you like to see in finance, would you say?
So it's interesting that when I was starting my career,
Yeah.
uh, I got into accounting. Many people don't know I actually have a math degree,
Oh, okay. Yeah.
which
Yeah.
has helped me a lot because it's a highly analytical mindset. I'm good with numbers, but a highly analytical mindset. I look at certain things in a different way because I also studied statistics.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
also have an economics degree, which is whenever we do the forecast, it's remind me of my econometric class many years ago.
Yeah.
So you want to have people who are data scientists, who have engineering background as well, like AI skill sets. You still want to have the traditional finance major, maybe a little bit of accounting, but I do think that accounting could be automated a lot. So it needs
Hmm.
to be a team from different professions. We should be also economists as well, because I think we sometimes are missing that economy um, background when we do forecasts.
Yeah.
It's not just like 10 accountants in a room
Yeah.
who bring
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
same perspective.
Yeah. So you talk about the economics background. I guess that would be helpful in terms of being mindful of like where I guess like what the current kind of financial climate is. Almost, is that what you're talking?
Absolutely, because like the
Yeah.
external factors impact the business as well, right? So
Of
it's not
course.
just
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
historical performance. It's operational drivers, it's external signals. So if you don't know uh, economic, if you don't have that background, you would be just focusing on like historical numbers. This is where a lot of my experience comes as well. Like I'm a CPA, a
Mhm.
math degree. I also studied business, but I have a very good understanding in terms of how the external factors impact the business as well, and that come from my diversity of my background. If I were just an accountant, all I would have known is just how to do journal entry. Well, get what? Like ChatGPT could do journal entry now.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah. Well, we're talking about now, I guess, is you're only, I guess, you're only going to be fearful of your job going if your skill set isn't broad enough. But if you broaden out what the role of finance is, and it is more strategic, then it's safer, isn't it? I guess like
I don't think you need to think, when you think about the narration, safety is not the right word. It,
Mhm.
how I could do this better and quicker. I personally, I can't live without ChatGPT or Gemini or Copilot. I can't use it, like, because it helped me to do certain thing quicker.
yeah, 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 yeah. So then you can start using your brain, actually using your brain once you've done
Yeah,
certain things
because you kind
quicker.
of
Yeah,
you
yeah.
almost have like a friend, or you could have a colleague who has access to more information than like a human, and could be your sounding board sometimes as well, right? It could say. So if you think that way, you naturally will evolve, and the way you do your job will evolve. But
Yeah.
if you just used to doing the same thing and you start thinking like, well, I used to do the journal entry, or I used to do this payroll thing, or uh, I did certain things certain way, obviously you're gonna make yourself redundant at some point. It's a mentality shift. It's a mentality shift.
I think that's really a really great point. I think that really is like I think that's been the main gist of this conversation is that ultimately, we're talking about something that is, an external factor, but really it's an internal mind shift that needs to change. That's really the main gist of this. I think it's really great. Um, just out of curiosity, what is the thing that you use AI for? Or particular or ChatGPT, whatever it is that like you think like it just kind of makes you go, oh, that is such a lifesaver. Like you kind of think like I don't know how I did it this way before. Is there anything like that in your role or even outside of it?
Dashboard, like example, like
Yeah,
dashboard. Like instead of like looking at just numbers, looking at the dashboard, uh, and because ChatGPT could also give you the narrative, like I said, right? He
Yeah,
could also tell you this is how I could looking at this performance and just saying, or this forecast and saying, okay, this is what I want you to know, what you could say. Like example as well is like I said, I use ChatGPT everywhere. I go to the conferences, it could give you the speaker notes.
Yeah.
I could
Absolutely.
look at I'm giving you an example, right? Forecast. It could give you a suggestion. You could look at, it could give you a suggestion, for example, I'm just giving an example, right? Like let's say the company is implementing revenue recognition standard.
Yeah.
If you develop an internal version of ChatGPT, that could actually tell you all the guidance you need to know, everything you need to consider, which is going to be very valuable when you go to the business and say, before you do that, this is what you need to be aware of. So with benchmarking as well, for example, for the public company reporting, uh, benchmarking is extremely important just to see what your peers doing. You could use AI to do that as well. In
Yeah.
AP, we use this to do three-way matching, very quickly match the invoice, the purchase orders, and there's so many opportunities, to be honest.
Yeah, it's
Like, use it
massive.
for.
Yeah. That's what I was saying before. Like this is not obviously not a flash in the pan. This is like huge. Like there's nothing it can't touch. And I think that's why people are fearful of it. Like you said, there's the job loss fear always, but I think it's just like you said, the way around it is just you can't worry because it's inevitable now. The genie is out of the bottle and you've got to
Either
adapt to
you
it.
either
Yeah.
you get on that train or that train will leave without you. So the earlier you get on that train, the better.
Yeah, absolutely. And learn how to work with it, definitely. And learn how to kind of augment the skills that you had that you weren't able to use because you were bogged down with so many other things that you had to do before. I think that's probably the
That's
mindset.
exactly the point. We're spending so much time during the day on things that someone else could do, and I'm talking about AI, but we don't actually have time to use our brain sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. I
But
think it's a really
it's
common
we're
experience.
very smart professionals, right? Like very smart leaders. So we should have time and capacity to be able to look at analyze that information, to read those reports. But right now, a lot of time we do it ourselves. I'm talking about our teams, for example, right? Which don't have time to do anything else.
Yeah, definitely. I think more time to think. More time to think leads to more time to innovate, definitely. I think. Big time. Yeah. Well, thanks so much, Nikki. It's been a great conversation. If people wanted to reach out to you, talk to you more about this topic, where should they go?
LinkedIn,
LinkedIn,
LinkedIn.
as always.
Oh, come to the conferences. So I speak at
Yeah.
a lot of conferences around the country. So I'm always open to hear about what others are doing as well, our leaders, because it's interesting. It's how we learn. So for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, this kind of change that you're talking about, it's going to happen through conferences like what we do at Finance Alliance. You know, it's getting together, people putting their heads together, sharing these frustrations with each other as well. I think, and inspiring people like you do. You know, talking about how the role could be different. Really looking forward to it, Nikki. Thanks so much for today.
Same here.
And that wraps up another episode of the 2 Cents Podcast. Thank you to our listeners for taking the time to tune in. If you enjoyed this episode and want to hear from more finance leaders like today's guest, please subscribe to the show and leave a rating or review on your favourite podcast app. It would mean so much to me and my guests if you can show them some love and appreciation for sharing so many great insights with us on the show. Again, thanks for listening. See you in the next one.